Hello beautiful people, welcome to the channel. The Witchy Goth here, hope you're doing well. Today's video is a follow-up video on the two previous videos that I've released about Tom Swarbrick and the interview that he did with Jess Phillips, the safeguarding minister. What I did was I released two videos, part one and part two, on two shorts that had been produced by somebody at LBC, taking certain parts of the interview that Tom Swarbrick did to create something that completely misleads the audience and anybody who listens to it into believing falsehoods around grape statistics. And I was so angry at both Tom Swarbrick. Obviously, he has to give a say-so, I would hope, as to what is going to be put out, but also a bit angry with Jess Phillips for perhaps not answering the questions as clearly as she could. However, I've now got the full video, which I'm going to play for you. It's 11 minutes, 37 seconds long. I'm going to play it for you and interrupt throughout, giving my opinions and trying to highlight where the parts of the two shorts were clipped. I suggest that you watch those two videos that I did. I know they're long videos. I do apologize for that, but there is a lot that I had to say about them. I'll also put the two shorts into the description box below, the links to them, so you can go and have a watch of them as well. And you can see exactly how the media manipulates this information to make it appear that a certain culture is committing a specific crime when the statistics that they are quoting are actually incorrect. So let me play this from LBC to start with.
Violence against women and girls and Labour MP for Yardley. Thank you for coming on the programme this morning, Jess Phillips. I read that these people are going to be forced to change their behaviour and stop their offending. How and by whom? Morning to you.
Hi there. What we are announcing today is a £53 million multi-year package to a project called the Drive Project, which is a partnership between victims, organisations and those working in the perpetrator space and police and others. In a few places in the country, this has been operating for nearly 10 years. And the evidence shows that when you move the attention from, well, not the attention, actually, I shouldn't say that, because there are victim services throughout this. When you move the accountability for the abuse that they suffer away from the victim, which I'm afraid to say still happens every day, and you move it onto the perpetrator of that abuse, and you ensure that they are being sent on courses to change their behaviour rather than women being sent on courses, which I see all the time, to stop them being victims, and you have very robust police action on protective orders, and you really focus on the offending behaviour of the offender. What we have seen is, for example, an 82% reduction in physical violence.
And what actually happened?
Okay, this is true. I myself was a victim, I call myself a survivor now, of DV, SA, SV, grape. And the onus is on the victim to attain support and help. Now, I will say that that is a good thing, because a lot of the time people who have gone through that need help. And, you know, there is very poor access to mental support and mental health issues through the NHS. And a lot of people have to go private for that help. So yes, there are groups out there that will help women with those issues, and I will put some links into the description box below as well. And also, if you are a woman and you have suffered from abuse like this, please contact Samaritans if you need to, 116 123. Also, you can contact Grape Crisis, I say that because of YouTube and its algorithms, and you can contact Refuge and Women's Aid and various other support groups out there that will help you with this situation. However, as Jess rightly says in this interview, the onus needs to be placed on the actual perpetrator and not the victim. The victim will learn how to spot these traits in a future relationship and how to react to that. But the problem should be that the perpetrator is the one who is fixed, if you like, who is able to recognize what they're doing is wrong, that it's misogynistic, that it's abusive, that it is a crime, and, to help them with their anger issues and whatever other issues they have. However, I still believe that these perpetrators will more than likely re-offend in the same way. This would have to prove me wrong. That's all I'm saying. This would have to prove me wrong. She says there's an 82% increase in people not re-offending. However, I would like to see the reaction to alcohol, the reaction to other illicit, illegal substances, and how that affects the person, the perpetrator, specifically talking about male perpetrators here, and how they respond in group situations. I would like to have a deeper look into that around this system that they've put in place.
What happens there, Minister? What you say sent on courses? Are they forced to go on courses, and what do those courses do?
So, look, there is no one solution for every single different sort of high risk of harm offender. But what this is a year-long programme of interruption and interaction with perpetrators of domestic abuse. Now, some of that interaction will be their collar being felt by the police in these circumstances. Some of this interaction will be about drug and alcohol services interventions for where they have problematic drug and alcohol issues that lead them to offending. It doesn't cause domestic abuse, but it certainly exacerbates it, all while the victim is being supported.
So,
exactly, that's exactly what I just said about illegal substances and alcohol, because a lot of this is fueled by that. We only have to see the effect that testosterone, alcohol, and other illegal substances have on men and women, but specifically men, making them want to fight and argue in a pub situation or out on the street on a Saturday night. And she said it's a year-long programme, and some of it will involve the police, visiting them and reminding them. I want to see this go further. I want a list of names that I can access easily online and don't have to pay for. I don't want to have to go to the police station and look up John Smith, for example, to find out if he is abusive. That information should be there so that women who fear that can go and look that up.
So the circumstances in which a man is suspected of hitting his partner or his girlfriend or what have you may well elicit a police response, but could also mean that someone knocks on the door and says you need to go to Alcoholics Anonymous in order to get control of your drinking? And if so, how do you make that person go?
So, across the country there is already a thing called a multi-agency risk assessment conference, which is where agencies sit around and discuss high risk of harm offenders, those whose abuse. It doesn't mean it's come across the police. It might have come in through housing, it might have come in through health, it might have come in through children's services. That is the way the system in our country works. And those who are identified, and I've sat on these multi-agency risk assessment conferences, and until now, in the vast majority of cases across the country, what happens is that you look at where you can move the victim to, you look at where what intervention you should do for the victim, and it's like the perpetrator doesn't even exist. And this is about, like Giselle Pellicoat asked us to do, move the shame from the victim and move it on to the perpetrator. And so this is about the perpetrator being held actively accountable for their behaviour, whilst the victim is being supported alongside.
Exactly what I said. A lot of the time you are told as the victim to move. Obviously you cut off all contact with that person, which is not so easily done if you have children with them or if you have assets with them and you need to sort that out. So it's not always possible to do that. Putting that protection around yourself as a victim, for example, putting up security cameras as I did, changing locks as I did, making sure that the authorities around you know who that person is and what may specifically happen. Cutting contact with their family and anybody that they know, because you get what we call the flying monkeys, who are their family members, who are their friends, who will contact you perhaps to dox you, to victimize you even more, make you into the actual perpetrator instead of the person who actually physically or sexually abused you. And it needs to move over onto the perpetrator. As I've said repeatedly on my channel, that victims of these crimes are the only ones who have to provide the evidence in any crime that is out there. So a woman goes to the police, reports this crime, gives evidence where she can, and then the police go, well, there's not enough evidence to hand to the CPS. This is not going to get a conviction. We're not going to, hand this over to them. So here you sit in limbo with fear. Those that are lucky to for their perpetrators to be handed over to the CPS, a lot of those cases will not be convicted. Those perpetrators will not be convicted because of insufficient evidence and the way the jury responds to those people. Often, as we know, the woman is held responsible for issues around grape, the way she dressed, was she drunk, why was she out so late, so on and so on and so on. Whereas the perpetrator is not looked at. And that is the misogynistic, patriarchal society that we live in. And I'm so glad that we have somebody like Jess Phillips there to, push this forward.
How will we know that this scheme has been a success?
Well, already it's operated for 10 years in some places, and already the University of Bristol have undertaken an evaluation that show that this massively reduces the incidences of violence, and compared to the control group, it reduced police interactions, it reduced physical violence suffered by the victim, sexual violence suffered by the victim, and stalking behaviours, and fundamentally the most important thing is that victims reported that their safety had increased in 82% of the cases. So that is how we will know, because we will continue to evaluate and monitor it.
Of course.
And that is rightly so. It needs to be evaluated and monitored. However, these are women or victims who have been through the system of, trying to get a conviction where the perpetrator is found to be guilty. What about the ones that are not found to be guilty? What about the ones that don't even get handed over to the CPS, Crown Prosecution Services? Those of us who have been in that situation, we're the ones that are given the support and help from the support systems that are out there, and that's it. That's where it ends. That is where it ends. And this is where stalking comes in, harassment comes in. And the victim, the woman, changes her entire life. Either she moves to a different area, so she's losing her support group, and she is then bound to stay in, not go out, too scared to go out, afraid, looking over her shoulder all the time. This happens. It happens. It happened to me. It still happens to me. It still happens to me.
Talking of those victims, clearly the end of the criminal justice process is the sentence that a perpetrator receives. I wonder what you make of, or what you felt about, the sentence offered to the fellas of the Sycamore Gap Tree some 4 and a bit years. And yet I've got a list of people here who have committed violence against young women and girls, including a 17-year-old raping a 13-year-old girl and being acquitted. What do you make of that Sycamore Gap sentence in the context of the sentences handed out for people who are violent towards women and girls?
Now, that is part of one of the short videos that was mentioned. And Jess will go on to say now the truth of what happened with that 17-year-old who allegedly raped the 13-year-old. He was acquitted. He was not found guilty. Bear that in mind. Also, as I've said previously, the 4 years that were given to the Sycamore Gap tree fellers was ridiculous. They should have been forced into some sort of community service where they plant trees for X amount of time or even for the rest of their life. But my belief is that men, perpetrators who commit grape, SA, SV, DV, actually receive longer sentences and, in my view, life sentences, because I know that the rehabilitation that they are putting in place here does not work. Sorry to say it, does not work. And it may work in some cases, but not in all.
Look, I don't want to say that those people I was actually in the northeast when the Sycamore Gap tree was felled, and I had no idea of the strength of feeling about that. So that was a little bit of a surprise to me. However, you cannot look at the comparator. I've spent my life saying that there is a fundamental problem where policies around women's safety matter less than bins, and which is, I suppose, quite topical because I'm from Birmingham. Yeah. And in this case, it feels like trees, and I can understand why people make that comparison. And that is why we have to do work for, and it will take years to undermine what is completely acceptable in lots of institutions across our countries, that women just should suffer in silence, and that the attention on them is always less so than it is for, boats matter more than women, cars matter more than women, and that is often how it feels. And so I spend my time writing the Violence Against Women and Girls strategy for the government, going into every government department, making sure that women's rights and the safety of women and children is everybody's priority.
They cut out part of that in the short about the tree fellers. They cut out the part where women are the victims. Let's take that back. Listen to that again. Sorry, I don't know what part it is. Bear with me.
What do you make of that Sycamore Gap sentence in the context of the sentences handed out for people who are violent towards women and girls?
Look, I don't want to say that those people I was actually in the northeast when the Sycamore Gap tree was felled, and I had no
Sorry that I'm
idea
repeating
of the
this
strength
part.
of feeling about that. So that was a little bit of a surprise to me. However, you cannot look at the comparator. I've spent my life saying that there is a fundamental problem where policies around women's safety matter less than bins, and which is, I suppose, quite topical because I'm from Birmingham. Yeah. And in this case, it feels like trees, and I can understand why people make that comparison. And that is why we have to do work for, and it will take years to undermine what is completely acceptable in lots of institutions across our countries, that women just should suffer in silence, and that the attention on them is always less so than it is for, boats matter more than women.
That women should suffer in silence. That was cut out. That was cut out. And this is what feminism is about. It's about ending this misogyny. It's about ending the patriarchy. It's about equality in this sense, that women should not suffer in silence.
Cars matter more than women, and that is often how it feels. And so I spend my time writing the Violence Against Women and Girls strategy for the government, going into every government department, making sure that women's rights and the safety of women and children is everybody's priority.
So you were tearing your hair out, perhaps, at the discrepancy in those sentences. Because, look, I've got another example. A man who engaged in sexual activity with a vulnerable 15-year-old girl in care was given a suspended prison sentence.
I find that as shocking as you, but I'm not in that courtroom. I agree with you. That seems completely and utterly wrong. And actually, the thing that we have to do is make sure that those people who are victims of sexual violence, like we've committed to in our manifesto, have specialist care from the police when they come forward, have specialist courts that can look after them, and are supported by legal support, so that these sorts of things don't happen. These are systems that won't change overnight, but we are putting in place policies that will change every single one of these things.
Why wasn't that put into a clip? Why? because it was positive, wasn't it? Because it showed that the government, the current government, the Labour government, and Jess Phillips and her department are actually doing something to make changes. Can't put that out there. No, we have to incense and rile up the right wing and point out that it's all to do with race and skin colour and religion and culture. And it is wrong. She said it's wrong. She's not in there in the court where these cases are dealt with. And I completely agree. There needs to be a change to the legal system. And hopefully, with Jess, this will come. This will happen. We have to keep fighting for this.
Think of some of the numbers coming from the Centre of Migration Control, analysis by the Daily Telegraph through an FOI, that shows that there might be a greater propensity of people from certain parts of the world to commit sexual offences. For example,
that bit was not included in the clip, that there may be a propensity from migrants all over the world to be convicted.
Afghans are 20%, according to these numbers, 22.
Let's take that back.
Do is make sure that those people who are victims of sexual violence, like we've committed to in our manifesto, have specialist care from the police when they come forward, have specialist courts that can look after them, and are supported by legal support, so that these sorts of things don't happen. These are systems that won't change overnight, but we are putting in place policies that will change every single one of these things.
What are we to make of some of the numbers coming from the Centre of Migration Control, analysis by the Daily Telegraph through an FOI, that shows that there might be a greater propensity of people from certain parts of the world to commit sexual offences? For example, Afghans are 20%, according to these numbers, 20 times more likely to account for sex offence convictions than...
Convictions. And I want to see this report. Now, Telegraph has everything behind a paywall, so I'm going to try and open up an account so that I can see this so-called report, and try and find something else online about this. And then when I have found that, I will do another video on it, because we can't see what he's reading and we can't tell if what he's saying is correct, because at first he says 20% and then he changes it to 20 times more likely to be convicted, which is what I said in my first video, part 1, was that why are they being convicted at a higher rate? Does it have something to do with the colour of their skin? Does it have something to do with their beliefs and religion and their culture? How is the jury chosen? What or who makes up the jury? Are they, swayed by popular opinion or by their own biases that they may already have? Jury choosing is very difficult. Choosing a jury that is not biased is very difficult. If I were to go to a jury and it was to do with a grape case, my initial thing would be they're guilty. That I would not be able to give a balanced view, because I always believe the victim. I have been there, and no matter what the perpetrator, the alleged perpetrator, has to say for themselves, I wouldn't believe them. That is just me. So I just want you to know that that is my opinion and my own feelings around this, because I know so many women who have gone through this who have not had the justice that they deserve.
And British people, does that concern you?
I have to look across all of this data and think about where I have to really focus and target resources on the prevention work that I am determined to do. But the data on who gets charged and convicted, as you have just quite rightly pointed out, who gets charged and convicted of these crimes is not data actually that I feel that can be robustly reflective of the reality. So in the case you just identified to me, that person didn't rape anybody, they were acquitted of that particular crime. Now, I have been around long enough to know...
Sorry, just to interrupt, do you think there are...
That was cut out. That whole section was cut out of the video. It was cut out. She never got a chance in that short to say that they were acquitted. And again, this comes to the anger creating that the right wing want to have, that this person was not found guilty to have done this. But the jury said not guilty. Whether or not that's the truth, I don't know. You know my opinion. I've said it here, and I've said it many times.
People in this country who have a culturally very, very different view of women and therefore are more likely to be engaged in these kinds of activities.
Which culture doesn't have patriarchy and misogyny in it? Because
do you think?
I mean, like that. I have seen victims and perpetrators from every single walk of life.
Do you think we are a fundamentally misogynistic?
I tell you what the group of people who are most likely to abuse, that is men.
And in that case, then this young man, Nicholas Prosper, not getting a whole life order, he murdered his mother and his sister and his brother-in-law. No whole life order. He's got 49 years in prison.
Look, it's very, very difficult for me as a government minister to... I wasn't in the courtroom. I am not a judge. I'm not even a lawyer. Maybe the Prime Minister could answer this question better. But I'll text him, shall I?
Yeah, do.
But the reality is that judges make decisions on the basis of laws that are put in front of them. Now, the government is undertaking a series of different reviews to look specifically at how we sentence and deal with homicide in this country. The Law Commission is undertaking the review because I could sit here and say to you, if you get murdered in your home by your partner, you will get a lesser sentence than if you get murdered in a park by your partner. There literally would be a different sentence. There is minimum sentences, so there's lots of discrepancies in how this works, and we are working to look at all of them.
Maybe you could
see that she is not responsible for the judges and then making the sentences and putting the sentences in place. I agree, that should be a whole life order. They should be put away for life for crimes like that. We had the crossbow killer. I did a video on that, who unalived his girlfriend, the girlfriend's sister and the mother, because of jealousy, because of, his anger, if I can't have you, nobody can. The SV that she suffered at the hands of him, all of that was, I've put that, and I'll put a link to that video into the description box below as well. And it is just wrong. It's almost as if a man committing femicide is seen as, well, it's not as bad as, a man committing homicide. It is, again, it comes down to the whole system being skewed towards protecting men, and that women are just objects.
Text the Prime Minister and ask about an issue of party management, because whilst I've got you on the line, do you agree that with Rachel Maskell having the whip withdrawn for her involvement in that welfare rebellion?
Okay, now we go on to the welfare rebellion and other things not to do with her brief. So I'm not going to talk about that. That is a subject matter that other commentators have covered, and it's not my remit, really. I focus on misogyny, patriarchy, grape, SV, DV, SA, and all of those issues that women face when it comes to politics. That is my area that I am most interested in. But we can see from what I've just played you, and again, I will link this into the description box below. It is from Global Player, so you will have to download Global Player in order to watch and listen to the whole thing. The comments that were made from the people who watched that video were mostly male, and they were mostly sort of the opinion that this 20 times more likely to be convicted was actually 20% more likely to commit when it wasn't. These interviewers, journalists, radio and TV hosts need to be held accountable for the words they say, because that influences right-wing voting. And the information that's given is wrong, because the vast majority of those right-wing voters who are male are probably of that persuasion. That's just my opinion. Anyway, if you've enjoyed the video, please click the like button. I'm sorry the video is so long, but there was a lot of information there that I wanted to say, and I wanted you to hear the actual full interview without it being cropped and words and sentences missed out, because the whole context is different to what it looks like in those two shorts. As I say, if you've enjoyed the video, please click the like button. Please subscribe to the channel. Really need to increase my subscribers. If you would like to make a donation to the channel, you can go to my GoFundMe page and make a donation there. It would be greatly, greatly appreciated. I do not have enough subscribers at the moment in order to monetize the channel. I want to help women out there. I want to help educate men out there that this is what women face on a daily basis. And in order to do that, I need your support. I'm not being paid by anybody. I'm not, here to advertise any products. I'm here to help women and to help educate men around how they can treat women differently, with more respect. Blessed be.